Bridesmaid ruins a wedding with her announcement, so then her bridesmaids ruin her wedding with their announcement. Last summer, I was at a cousin's wedding. His bride and her family had been close with ours since before I was born, and the couple had known each other since they were toddlers, so it was a particularly exciting event for both sides of the family. However, after the ceremony was over and the party had only just started, one of the bridesmaids decided to announce her own engagement. The attention was immediately taken away from the newlyweds and brought to the bridesmaid, who I'll call Sarah, and her equally smug fiancé. My cousin's wife, I'll call her Emma, didn't make a scene or utter a single negative word about Sarah. She looked like she was on the verge of tears, but she kept grinning and acted very happy for the other couple. This was unusual, as Emma is typically quite confrontational and speaks her mind no matter the consequences. Sarah later picked Emma to be the maid of honor at her own wedding, which took place last weekend. I wasn't there for it, but my cousin sent me some of the best bits on Snapchat and explained the whole situation. This is where the fun begins. Emma's two much younger sisters were the flower girls at Sarah's wedding. At the very last moment, Emma switched out the white petals in their basket to blue ones she'd secretly brought with her. She told her sisters not to say anything about it or let the bride see them until it was time to scatter them down the aisles. Sarah looked very confused upon seeing the blue petals, which didn't coordinate whatsoever with her theme. But of course she didn't say anything about it in the moment. Most of Sarah's other bridesmaids were also Emma's friends and had attended Emma's wedding and were in on Emma's scheme. At the reception, Emma's sisters and the other bridesmaids were tight-lipped when Sarah began demanding to know why there were blue petals. The wedding planner ended up catching a whole lot of crap for not checking the flower girls' baskets before they walked down the aisle. Finally, it was time for the speeches. The speeches took place in front of a massive screen displaying a loop of photos with Sarah and her husband, which had been compiled by Emma. Emma took the remote that controlled the presentation screen, and at first she showed some pre-approved humorous photos of Sarah with Emma and other friends to facilitate a couple of light-hearted jokes. Then at the very end, Emma said to Sarah that she must be wondering why there were blue petals instead of the white ones originally planned. That was when Emma displayed the last slide from her presentation. Emma announced in front of everyone that she was 5 months pregnant and that she had just discovered the baby was a boy, hence the blue petals. The last slide? Her ultrasound picture. There were shocks and yells and gasps. Sarah had a fit, but those involved in the scheme cheered so loudly that I sincerely regret watching the Snapchat recordings with headphones. Apparently Sarah had been very nasty to her bridesmaids before, driving several of them away and forcing others to pay ridiculous amounts of money for dresses. Emma and my cousin were eventually thrown out of the party, but they were all smiles. Sarah's fuming mother went to confront her outside, and Emma retorted with, "Gentle, gentle, I'm pregnant." I reckon Sarah doesn't speak to the majority of those bridesmaids anymore. In short, self-important bridesmaid announces her engagement at my cousin's wedding, stealing the spotlight from him and his bride. Said bridesmaid foolishly names my cousin's wife her maid of honor and behaves like a complete bridezilla. Cousin's wife sabotages her wedding to announce her own pregnancy. Is Sarah the jerk? Yuck. Yeah, this is another one of those cases where everybody just sort of sucks here. Except maybe the poor wedding planner who got torn a new one for having all their careful work undone. I'd say although Sarah absolutely is a jerk, given how it sounds like she behaved to everyone, you could probably put her stealing the spotlight at Emma's wedding down to being dumb rather than intentionally ruining things. Kinda just feels like Emma's really just let this whole thing simmer too long and probably could have just put her energy into other things. Really gross, everyone. If you don't like each other, just don't be friends. Do better. Cheating while we're engaged? I'll exploit your phobias. A while back, I was engaged to a guy who seemed like a good choice. Attractive, funny, good job, owned a home. I learned he had a bit of a downside though. He was a cheating slimeball motherfricker. Not just a one-time, one-night stand with co-workers after too much of a drink, which I would have still been angry about, but might have been able to get over. His flings were repeated and with more than one woman. I picked up on a few cues, but eventually I had things confirmed beyond a shadow of a doubt. I was venting to my brother about this and told him about how I planned to move out while the butthead was out on a week-long business trip. He volunteered to help me before I asked, and then got this amazing devious grin on his face. "We can also leave a memento for him," he said. When I asked what he meant, he said, "Pennywise and his friends." You see, the Wick Dipper was scared of clowns. Not just a little uncomfortable, but freaking terrified of them. Even as a grown man, a clown on a TV show, webcomic, or book would freak him out and he'd have to change the channel or click away. My brother owns a print shop and is protective of his little sister. So, in the couple of weeks leading up to the Buttheads trip, he printed off dozens of pictures of clowns of various sizes, ranging from really small wallet-sized ones to big poster-sized prints. We framed most of the stuff in some super cheap plastic frames. Others we laminated. We managed to move all of my stuff out pretty quickly, which gave us a lot of time to get things set up for my ex. We took down every single framed picture and put up framed clown pictures. The clowns ranged from average clown to nightmare fuel hellspawn. Pictures on the walls, art prints, photographs in frames on tables. You name it, it was replaced with a clown picture. Where we became really devious was taking the laminated ones and placing them in things like silverware drawers, the underside of the toilet lid, so when he went to take a leak he'd be greeted by some nightmare fuel clown when he lifted the seat, in the fridge and freezer, on the back of cleaning bottles, in his underwear drawer, and a bunch of other places. We even made sure to put some in places that he wouldn't go into for a while, so he'd get scared months later. He had one of those attic accesses that you have to pull down and a ladder descends. We put a big laminated clown face on there so when the ladder flipped open for him to climb, he'd get a clown face. While we were setting this up, I went a step further and changed the wallpaper on his desktop computer to a clown. I also took about 10 of his favorite movies that he had on DVD and replaced them with the burned DVDs that had clown footage. They auto-played and we'd printed up labels for them that looked like the original DVD artwork. We put all of his original artwork and DVDs in the basement, off the ground, and protected them from damage, but surrounded by giant clown posters of Pennywise and the like, and a motion sensor that, when triggered, would play a creepy clown laugh. I left a note on the kitchen table that said, "I know about you cheating, frick you, I'm out." After a few days of hard work of moving me out and moving a few clown cars worth of terror in, my brother, his wife, and I celebrated by grilling some steaks and having a few beers. These were paid for by the engagement ring I sold. Once the idiot returned, I got a text message or two that were along the lines of, "You witch." It must have taken him days to take care of the photos out in the open alone. There was never any further action or legal repercussions for what we'd done. After all, what grown man would want to say that his ex-fiancée scared him with clown pictures? Well, I think it strains credulity that you stayed with this man for so long after you found out he was cheating just to get your very specific warped revenge, but if this did happen, it seems like a pretty fitting punishment. Honestly, if you're going to serial cheat on your partner, you deserve a punishment akin to this. As a man who's been repeatedly mortified by an unexpected life-sized cutout in his workplace bathroom, I can only imagine how awful it would be to have something that you actually have a phobia of inflicted on you on a daily basis. Good revenge. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Cause me hassle on moving out? Well, I'll cause you 50 grand in home repairs. This story happened a few years ago when I was still new and ignorant to renting apartments. My landlord was a right piece of work and violated so many laws, but again, I was new to the whole thing and he knew that and took advantage of my ignorance. I'd lived in one place, which I really enjoyed, and signed a renter's agreement with the landlord. Then, after 2 months, he said I had to leave because I made too much money. I loved this place I had and was paying very decent rent, but he said not to worry, that he owned another building that had an available apartment in it I could move into. Begrudgingly, I made the move out there. It wasn't as nice of a place by far, though it still had the same amount of rooms, a bedroom, and a smaller office, so I figured I couldn't complain. And he charged me the same rent. Though I never signed anything for this place, he literally just switched keys with me. This new place was kind of gross though. Cracks in the wall, black mold growing in certain corners, the bathroom door literally didn't close, the radiator leaked water, and the toilet. Well, let's just say it wasn't the same color on the inside as it was on the outside. As the months went on, I began to notice things were different when I'd come back from work. Sometimes it would just be, "Did I leave those papers like that?" All the way to, "There's a muddy footprint in here." I figured out he'd been coming into my place when I wasn't around. This was the last straw, and with the support of my boss, who was also my really good friend, I began looking for a new place with a different landlord. I finally did and told my boss I was unsure if I should put in notice or what. He asked if I signed a lease or papers or anything in that place, and I said no. His exact words were, "Screw it, pack up your crap and move." Therein lies the most stressful move I've ever experienced. I didn't own a lot of things, but what I had meant a lot to me. I'd earned it. I had my best friend there helping me pack up my stuff. My best friend was also my boss's wife, by the way, as well as 2 of their kids. We got through a small amount of loading things up when Mr. Butthead got tipped off. He then kicked my friend off his property and told me that if I left the apartment, he would change the locks and not let me back in. Keep in mind, this isn't before the end of the month and I'd already paid for the entire month. So I sat in my apartment, crying, trying to figure out what to do. I called my boss, who was coming quickly because his wife and kids were there, as well as one of my brothers, and I was scared to leave my apartment as I didn't want to lose any of my things. After my reinforcements came, the landlord backed off, and I quickly got all of my important things out of there, though I made sure someone was always inside the apartment at all times. Before leaving, however, I took some quick pictures of the mold and cracks and other disgusting things around my place. A few days after settling into my new place, I went to City Hall and the Health and Safety Board and showed them the pictures. Turns out they were just as interested in them as I was. Nearly a year later, I came across one of my old neighbors from inside the building, an older lady that had lived just below me. We made quick pleasantries and then she asked if I'd heard what happened after I left. I said no, as my new place was in the next town over, so I didn't even frequent the neighborhood anymore. Apparently, thanks to the lovely pictures I sent in, my landlord was investigated and was forced to do just over $50,000 worth of repairs on the building. Always good to have a clear-cut villain in our stories here, and landlords just so often fit the bill perfectly. Moving you to a different, less nice building because you earn too much? Sounds like he wanted to get you to pay the same amount in a gross apartment that nobody else would even consider moving into. And revenge aside, you definitely did everyone else a favor by getting City Hall involved on your way out. Your landlord would have been legally obliged to fix the issue, and the other tenants would have benefited as a result. Plus, maybe he'd be more careful about getting on his tenant's bad side afterwards. Try to save 0.01 seconds on the subway? Wait 30 more minutes for a bus. I was at the subway station a couple of days ago, getting back from university. As I got off the subway to line up and go up the escalators, this middle-aged lady nudged me out of the way just as I got on the steps and made me trip over and fumble my bag. She stared at me and went on her way. I was right behind her going up, and she probably saved about 0.01 seconds getting on the escalator before me. As we made our way to the exit and got up to the doorframe, she went out of her way to nudge past me again. She gave me another stare as she went through the exit and stood there looking at me, like she couldn't believe I tried to go first or something. There's a bus terminal that connects to the subway on the street level, and we ended up waiting at the same stop. She was first in line and I was right behind her. When the bus finally arrived, she really took her time fumbling through her purse, talking on her phone and looking for her Presto card. As she was searching for this card, she ended up dropping it right at the tip of my boot. She was still busy talking on the phone while searching through her wallet. I thought about it for a second and decided to lightly slide her card underneath the bus with my foot. Eventually, she realized that she might have dropped her card. So she packed her wallet back in her purse, hung up the phone, and looked around for her card. As she looked, she began getting increasingly worried, scanning everywhere for where she could have dropped it. I nudged her out of the way, gave her a stare, and made my way onto the bus. I sat myself happily on one of the seats. I saw her flustered and panicked, as the next bus was coming in half an hour. The bus started to depart and I opened the window and told her, with glee, maybe you should check under the bus. I watched her for as long as I could until she was out of sight, and enjoyed the rest of my commute home. I'm a jerk, right? Apparently Presto is the Toronto transport card. If so, this might rank among the top 10 most hostile attacks ever to take place on Canadian soil. So you're notable for that at least. This might be the most petty story I've read in a while, but it is very funny, so thank you, author. I doubt our antagonist learned her lesson, but it's fine. We all need villains in our life, and she probably fulfills that role in many people's lives, one little nudge at a time. Today I messed up by visiting my bat-crap crazy family in Oklahoma. As some backstory, my wife was scheduled for a business trip, so I decided that during her time away I'd go visit my family. Since they live in the United States' thickest concentration of crystal heads, the great state of Okla, run and don't look back Homer, I knew it would be a chaotic visit, but I had no idea what exactly was in store for me this time around. After letting my mum know what dates I was coming for the visit, I started getting some weirder-than-normal texts. Now, usually, texts from my family go something like this. I read online that snorting hydrogen peroxide is good for your health. Or, we're taking out a loan to buy a chateau because the jacuzzi we just bought doesn't fit in the house. Mind you, both of my parents are broke, refuse to apply for jobs, and are largely living off my siblings' incomes. But this time I got a flurry of text messages accusing my wife of secretly bullying me. The reason these messages were so odd is that my family has known my wife for over 10 years, and she is literally the sweetest person ever. And ironically enough, my parents are the ones with the past history of mistreating all their kids. Verbally, emotionally, physically, and financially. And my angel of a wife has consistently loved and supported me through the PTSD aftermath of growing up with those crazy people. So after reassuring my mum that my wife is still the same sweet and non-bullying person as always, my mum started going on about secret knowledge she had and wouldn't tell me what it was. Finally, I just chalked it up to her being bored and trying to start crap for entertainment purposes. So, fast forward to the actual familial visit. I woke up exhausted and decided to treat myself to some coffee at a local shop. The one I was going to was about a 5-mile drive from where my parents live. But I'd been so stressed out from the usual family arguments and gaslighting that highway hypnosis kicked in and I ended up a half-hour away. Realizing I'd have to drive half an hour back, I went ahead and called my mum to let her know so that she wouldn't worry. Shortly thereafter, my sister calls me. She goes on about how highway hypnosis proves I'm unhinged and delusional. She says I must have something wrong with my brain and need immediate medical attention at an ER. But not the closest ER to me, the closest ER to her. She lives 2 hours away from my parents. My sister says I need to see Dr. X and have him sign paperwork to get me checked into a mental ward for my own safety. When I tell her she's overreacting and that I'm perfectly okay, that it was just me zoning out and going on autopilot for the drive, she tells me she and my mum have been noticing my worsening pattern in my cognitive behavior for a while. I ask what behavior, and she won't actually give me a clear answer. Anyway, I get back to my parents' house and go into their guest house to finish my coffee and send a few emails before fully starting the day. Except I hear a noise in my mum's office, next to the room I'm staying in, so naturally I decide to check it out. Spoiler, it was my mum's cat knocking down a folder full of papers from her desk. Going to pick the papers up, something catches my eye. My name. On paper after paper, there was my name. On an involuntary civil commitment needing a physician's approval signature for indefinite commitment. Power of attorney going to my mother upon my involuntary commitment, proxy divorce papers to be filed on my behalf against my wife, and written statements by my family that my wife had mistreated me and they were therefore requesting annual alimony to be paid to my soon-to-be power of attorney for the remainder of my involuntary commitment. My blood ran cold. Of all the ways to extort my wife for money, they were trying to get me locked up for life in a psychiatric ward to do it. I called my wife, packed my bags, and left without saying goodbye. I just wanted to add these updates in the days following. The reason I felt it was okay to leave the cat is that my parents treat her like a cat goddess. I think it's common with a lot of narcs that they're able to love pets and plants unconditionally, but not their own kiddos. Also, this isn't the first time they've tried getting me committed, sadly. In high school, a decade ago, we were having a big fight and my parents tried forcing me into the car to take me to an ER to be committed. Also, I had to use the bathroom in the middle of the fight. They followed me to the bathroom to continue fighting with me and ended up physically dragging me off the toilet. I realize most families aren't like this and I should have gone no contact a long time ago. Narcissistic families screw with your head pretty badly and I still deal with bad bouts of guilt that make me think I'm in the wrong and need to make amends. I'm applying for a new social security number and changing my name. My social security number has also never worked properly, so it might not even be a real one. Thanks to everyone who wrote in with advice on things I hadn't even considered could happen. I do appreciate it, and I'm sorry to everyone who seems like they've gone through the same things as me. You don't deserve that crap, and I hope you're able to live a happy, stress-free life. In short, my mum and my sister tried getting me committed to a mental hospital to gain power of attorney, file a proxy divorce, and steal my wife's money. Good Lord. What else is there to say about this one? Continue as you seem to be doing. Leave, never contact these people again, and document everything negative they've ever done so that you can prove that their testimony isn't to be trusted. They're a bunch of leeches who are purely after money, no matter which kids they have to throw into underfunded sanatoriums to do it. So why not choose the one who got away from them, I guess? You're better off without them, author. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to check out some great music, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.